Welcome to Value Education, Perspectives on Process, a series of conversations with administrators, teachers, and students about meaningful issues in education. Today, I am here with Dylan Spencer, co-host of the show, and a set of athletes who are going to help us to understand how to stay fit and healthy while at home. Take it away, Dylan.
Yeah, so today we have, as you mentioned, 3 competitive high school athletes with us that are going to speak about staying home and staying fit. Olivia Alfarth, a sophomore and competitive soccer player. Lucy Friedman, a junior competitive tennis player. And Vincenzo Griffo, who's also a junior and who is a 3-sport athlete playing lacrosse, soccer, and bowling. So how long have you guys been playing your sports?
So I'm Olivia, and I've been playing soccer since I was 4. And I play currently on New York Soccer Club, which is in a league that develops athletes to be collegiate athletes and national athletes. And I was also recently drafted onto the Turkish women's national soccer team for girls under 17.
I'm Lucy. I've been playing tennis since I was probably about 5. I currently play for the school, Rye Neck High School, under the coach Mark Cano, and then during the year I play competitive sectional and national tournaments in the USTA tournament circuit.
I'm Vincenzo, and I've been playing soccer for as long as I can remember. I play at the varsity level under Brian Ecovelli, my soccer coach. I've been playing lacrosse since 6th grade and now at the varsity level with Coach Sable and Coach Bika. And I've been playing bowling for my duration of high school with Coach Suman.
So obviously your experience with your team was very different before the quarantine as compared to now. Can you tell us a bit about what you're doing with your sport before the quarantine and what you've had to give up as a result of it?
So during the season, I usually play 4 days a week. And then I was also training with a personal trainer on like my one off day. And then we would play games about twice a week on a Saturday or a Sunday. And then right before this quarantine happened, I was supposed to leave to play with the Turkish national team. And I was on my way, and then everything shut down and I was turned back, and the whole tournament in Europe was canceled. So that's kind of how quarantine has affected me.
Before quarantine, I would practice by hitting with other competitive tennis players probably 5 or 6 times a week. And then 2 days a week, I would work out doing strength training and then sometimes agility training. And then tournaments would be probably every weekend, if not every weekend, every other weekend. And now with quarantine, I'm lucky enough to hit when I can safely on a local tennis court. And then I do strength and agility at home, obviously limited, but
Before quarantine, I would have practices and games 6 days a week with the varsity lacrosse team because we're in season now. And now that quarantine has happened, we haven't had the chance to do any of that.
Wow, so it sounds like your guys' lives have changed dramatically with quarantine. You know, before school and training, going to the gym, working privately, and so on. How have you been staying fit now?
So now I kind of break it up into technique and physicality. So I would go for runs almost every day from 3 to 5 miles. For technical work, I work in my backyard. I do some dribbling, passing, volleys, everything to keep my footwork in shape.
I know that. Oh, sorry, Lucy. Go for it.
I've been hitting when I can, when I have the time, and then like Olivia said, I have a 4-mile loop that I like to run, and then I also do weights on the side.
I've been currently, now that I had this season free, I'm usually playing 3 seasons, and summer's my off season. So now that I have this season free, I'm taking the time to weightlift and trying to build up muscle with this free time. And in addition to this, I've been in contact with my lacrosse coach, Coach Sable, and Coach Bika, along with our trainer, Dranoff, and he's been giving us a lot of helpful exercises and stretching routines that have helped me through this process.
Olivia, I know you're a plant-based athlete. You know, you've spoken a bit about pre and post workouts. Can you speak a little bit on how that diet parlays into the present situation?
Yeah, so I think it's really important, not only with the physical and mental part of my sport, the nutritional part of my sport I really value. And I think that's something that sets me aside from other athletes. one thing that I really focus on is pre and post fueling, which is like eating a certain macronutrient that will help you during your workout. So for example, eating maybe pasta, which is a good carb, before you're going on a long run, so you could fuel that run, or eating protein after a heavy lifting workout to build muscle, something like that.
Okay, cool. And Lucy, you mentioned your training regimen. Did you create that entirely yourself, or did you have help from your coaches or peers?
Actually, I do speak to my coach probably twice weekly, and we kind of just discuss weekly goals and how I'm going to divide each day up so I can make sure I'm making the best of this time.
And Vincenzo, I know you've been in contact with your coaches as well, but I'm super curious about how you've been balancing training for your 3 different sports given the off time.
Well, I'm primarily trying to do training that relates to those 3 sports, which is like strength training for my upper body as well as lower body, which kind of factors into all 3. And then with the other time I have, I've been kind of dividing it of what I can between soccer, bowling, and lacrosse.
Okay, and given that you guys aren't actively competing, how are you able to gauge yourself and how well you're doing?
So during the season, it's really important to like look at your fellow athletes and compare yourself and get better. But without that and being an individual athlete, you kind of have to look at yourself and build upon that. So for example, if you go for a run and you time your run and use measurements like that, just try to beat it every day and get better.
Tennis is primarily individual as it is, but definitely during the quarantine, since I can't be on court as much, like Olivia said, timing my runs and then increasing my reps with the weight training is how I measure myself.
I would say that now that you're alone, you kind of have to compete with yourself, and I set goals for myself. So like a certain amount of push-ups or pull-ups or a certain weight that I want to lift or running time. And those can kind of gauge how far I'm progressing.
I have a question. I just want to go back a little bit. You guys are all really active and you're young. For those viewers who maybe are a little bit closer to where I am, what kinds of snacks do you eat? I mean, eating pasta, before a run is really good, but like, what are the smaller things that are easier to manage?
Well, for protein, which is an essential part, an essential macronutrient for an athlete, peanut butter and different types of nuts like cashews, pistachios, those are great sources of protein, especially for a plant-based athlete. And that will build up muscle and keep you lean during your training.
What I usually have before I go out and practice, it's not big at all. Just either have an apple or banana, and carbs give you quick fuel so you're ready to go. So I'd recommend that.
I would say some fruit, anything you like, or if you're feeling a little more hungry, want something to hold you over, like any type of Greek yogurt is great for protein.
Oh, that's a great idea. I just wanted to, ask, I know all of you have other interests and projects that you're involved in that are connected to your athletics. Olivia, can you tell us a little bit about your athlete and food podcast?
Yeah, so I started a podcast, and so far I have 2 podcasts up. It's on podcast.com. And I've interviewed 2 doctors. I've interviewed Dr. Marcy Schneider and Becca McConville, who is a professional dietitian who specializes in athletes. And basically we go over kind of what the opinion is, like that's supported by medical literature, and just how people view plant-based diet, and just maybe like how it relates to athletes, which is like the main point of the whole podcast. So yeah.
Did you really focus on making sure you get enough protein and enough balance in your diet?
Yeah, balance is a really important part because you don't want to underdo it as an athlete. You kind of always want to almost overdo it because you know that you're going to be burning so much and tearing so much muscle that needs to be repaired. So we talk about that a lot in our podcast. Yeah.
Do you either of you have any other special dietary or management strategies with your food?
Definitely during this training block. I mean, I don't have anything specifically, but now I'm trying to stay away from sweets and junk foods just so I can make the most of the quarantine.
Yeah, for me, I'm trying to build on muscle and put on weight. So I would say that I'm trying to eat as many whole foods and less processed stuff, but also trying to get in as much protein and calories as possible.
I have another question, if you don't mind. How do you cope with injuries? I know that that's a part of your work. So what happens if you're working out and you pull a muscle or you sprain something? What do you do?
I have a question for that. Is that specific to in quarantine or outside quarantine?
Well, now, I mean, we're trying to help people to be good athletes at home. So how
Okay.
do you do if you pull something?
So the good thing about quarantine is that you have a lot of time to rest and you don't have an upcoming game or practice that you really want to shine to your coach at. So for example, if you do pull a muscle, I would say rest for 1 day or 2 days because you're given that time during quarantine, and then just slowly incorporate cardio and fitness back incrementally into your daily life.
I would always advise to rest because, I mean, if you don't rest, it can lead to something a lot more serious. I've definitely experienced that in the past. So I always think it's better to take more time resting as opposed to continuing with your sport or athletic activity.
Now, Lucy, you've had a lot of experience with injury. You had an injury. Could you just quickly tell us, what happened and then how you developed your website out of it?
Right. So when I was a freshman back in, I think 2017, I was playing a lot, and in a tournament, I pulled something in my hip, and so I ended up getting a labral tear in my right hip, and then I got surgery for that November 2018, and during that whole experience, I kind of realized that there was an absence in a support system for injured teen athletes. So since I had so much time on my hands, since I wasn't competing and training, I made a blog, with the domain www.injuredteenathlete.com, where I post resources and just advice for those who are going through hard injuries that aren't just a few weeks or a few months, that are for a longer span of time.
Really interesting. And Vincenzo, you work on hydroponics.
Yes. Do you want me to go into that?
Yeah, tell us about that, because I think that's really going to be the future, growing our own vegetables and having fresh food all year round. Tell us about that a little bit.
So hydroponics is a system where, in place of soil to grow plants, nutrient-rich water is used, and there's multiple different systems and combinations and materials you can use. And it's also very scalable. You can have it at home, you can have it in a factory, and it's a great way, one, I think, to grow fresh foods and those kind of foods you need to fuel up, and two, it's a great use of resources, and now that we have it, time to kind of spend your day.
Hey, Dylan.
Yeah, I imagine many of the viewers at home are wanting to stay athletic as well. Do you guys have any advice that you would give them to maintain fitness during the quarantine?
I would say plan your day so you know what you're going to do that day and you could just check off the boxes. And I believe that if you take 14 minutes of one day, that's only 1% of your day to plan the next day. Then you have your whole next day set and ready to go. And then you just have to check off the boxes and you've completed everything and you're productive.
I'd say that doing any activity is better than doing nothing. So if it's just, going on a walk with your family member, or maybe the next day you go on a jog, but you have to start somewhere. So just, if you're concerned about where to start, just start small and build up as you go.
As Lucy kind of said, starting, and you can do more than what you think you can do, whether it be going on a run or some kind of body weight exercises. Google's your best friend, or even talking to your trainers or coaches, or if you don't have one, just, as I said, Google. You can find a lot of activities to do that'll really help you.
Okay, and to our viewers, while it's difficult to be home for such a long time, you can still, as proven by these student athletes, stay athletic and really capitalize on this large chunk of time that we've been given.
So I hope everybody will, eat well, eat healthy, and start to get some exercise. And the weather's getting nice, so there's really no reason not to. I'm sure you feel just as inspired and in awe of these young athletes as I. And I hope that you will continue to watch Value Education with Dylan Spencer and me, Dr. Valerie Fight, and we always have wonderful guests, and thank you so, so much. See you next time.